Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the world around, I'm here to give you my unsolicited opinions. Just a couple of things I was perusing, taking a look at, seeing some stuff on. Wanted to throw my 2 cents in there because I can, because I will, and because there's a group of people who will actually give me time. You talk about all the JRPG controversy? You're damn right I'm going to talk about it. X-Play. Oh boy. So, before I obviously go into any more detail, I want to make it explicitly clear that I am not here to throw... Oh, hold on. Somebody sent a picture of a really good-looking woman, and I'm going to go ahead and admire this, and alright. I'm not here to throw stones in glass houses. I'm not going to sit there and think that anybody needs to be deplatformed for having an opinion. I also don't even think that the actions of people that they've done in the past are something that need to be... canceled unless it's explicitly fucking terrible. Honestly, it's just an opinion and sort of a recontextualization of where games media was a couple of years back when we were all little baboos. And I think we kind of had a conversation about this last time when we were doing the more just chatting stream. We were talking about Tommy Tallarico and what have you. The where games media was then and now, and how it's much more different, and how there are certain individuals within the games media market that haven't really changed for the better, unfortunately. I've never really put X-Play under a microscope, because when I think about X-Play, when I think about the show that I love, the thing that I really enjoyed the most, I think I've gone on record by saying that extended play and everything that was tech TV related was so much more enjoyable than what ended up happening with G4, because obviously, as everyone knows, G4 was their whole modus operandi was, what if we're just Spike TV but for nerds? When that came with hiring a lot of pretty people that would basically sit there and make fun of you for even remotely engaging in the media that you're consuming, which is really funny that we kind of have like this really huge stalwart reaction to it, where it's like, oh, in retrospect, it wasn't that funny. They were just making fun of us. And it's like, dude, they were making fun of us the whole fucking time, so. So yeah, there's just been some controversy stirring due to some comments that Yoshi P has said outside of the comments that he got shit on for, which is the inclusivity and diversity within Final Fantasy 16, which we've already kind of crossed that bridge and talked about it at length, but as it were, the last interview he had seemed to be a bit more PR friendly, where he was like, go ahead and play the game for yourself to see how diverse it is. Which is probably an answer for there's 0 black people in the game, or the black people that are in the game are in a very bad spot, so we'll see. We're not here to cancel Yoshi P. I've already said my piece on that, and I think everybody who's already kind of looked at it is going to still buy the game and love it and enjoy it, but we're going to, obviously have to call attention to it and call it out for what it is. But anyways, let's get into it. Let's pull up some stuff. Let's see here. Right now, I think from what I checked, 4chan is trending, but X-Play is trending at the moment. And it's trending because of some comments that Yoshi P had said about JRPGs. This is going to depend on who you ask, he specified, but there was a time when this term first appeared 15 years ago, and for us as developers, the first time we heard it, it was like a discriminatory term. Suggested as at the time, the term JRPG was used to silo off Japanese RPGs from other RPGs from the West, often to negative effect. Furthermore, Yoshida and team don't set out to create a game that fits the more narrow-minded definition of a JRPG. They want to make a broad RPG in line with all the rest of the wider genre. SkillUp notes that Yoshida was quick to acknowledge that nowadays the usage of the term has been far more positive, but that also he feels that there are still a lot of developers in Japan that remember feeling that the terminology itself was overly restricting and triggers bad feelings for those who were around at the time when the term was first coined. We're going to create an RPG, but to be compartmentalized, that felt discriminatory, Koji Fox notes. Which, yeah, there's a brilliant example that people have been pretty much bringing up almost immediately, which is why X-Play has come under pretty heavy fire. India. And I want to go ahead, I think we've spoken about this before, like I want to reiterate that I don't think that X-Play is essentially the problem itself. I think the big issue here is that what what exploit ended up becoming, because it used to be extended play, and then they removed that for the more G4 centric campaign that they were going for, the one where it was like, yeah, gamers like big titties and they like, you know, but they're all nerds and it'd be really funny, they like edgy comedy and da 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 da. So here's a video of a review for Baten Kaitos, which funnily enough is getting an HD remake.
We all know who will replace us. India, that billion-strong faux vegetarian tech support call-taking behemoth of a nation. Or the Chinese. But certainly not Japan, because while they may be technologically advanced and financially powerful, they're already in decline. You want proof? Here's Baten Kaitos' origins.
I'll write the story. Let me guess. There's probably a young hero with some sort of memory problem who's fighting a vastly overwhelming Evo fascio magical empire. Cliche burden boy of action who will save us all is named Sagi. Rhymes with Saki. Saki! Which I could use a lot of right now.
Sagi!
Saki! And apparently nothing says prequel like improved breast physics on the shopkeepers.
Sagi!
Sake!
Sagi!
Saki! Will you shut up about Sagi?
Sagi!
Saki! 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 Baten Kaitos' Origin is an RPG for the GameCube. That about says it all.
And we all
So, obviously, it's full of just really silly bullshit humor, reductive stances, the whole kit and caboodle. It's very much that was the review essentially for Baten Kaitos. It was talking down to it. It was making fun of it. And this was pretty much commonplace in every single kind of almost Japanese game. It wasn't even just for Japanese RPGs, as we slowly but surely found out. This was a problem in X-Play and most of games media for quite some time. There was a large presence where people would just kind of look at Western media as like, oh, that's the one for, you know, for adults, and Japanese are creating games for kids or quote unquote weirdos, which is so funny to me considering how strong Japanese games have been in their influence on modern day culture and what have you. So it's just really weird to think back to stuff like this and to see these kinds of opinions back and forth. And Marl's Girl has actually shared a video where it was about, I think we can actually go back to the X-Play thing here. Oh, and apparently I have to see their Tales of Abyss review because apparently they completely shit the bed on this one. But right here, Marl's Girl actually has a video about another game that they did. Seems like another big yikes to me, so let's go ahead and take a small look into that as well.
You know, dance crazes sweep the nation every few years or so. The Macarena, the Lambada, and pretty much dry after that. But Japan, the home of screwy fads, has decided to deliver yet another to us.
We can't quite bring ourselves to give the game a full review. The game is sort of inane and pointless. But here's a look at Para Paradise.
If you're completely confused right now, don't panic. X-Play is here to explain everything. What you're seeing on screen is called para dancing, and it's actually a popular form of dance in Japan. In 2000, game maker Konami cashed in on the craze and released an arcade game named Para Paradise, which used motion sensors to judge players' dance moves. Arcades started importing them into America, much to the delight of skinny, pasty-faced geeks nationwide.
It's a good party game. It's a good game where you have a group of friends and you try it, and everyone's horrible at it at first. You just laugh and move around. I mean, it's really fun that way.
Okay. But unless you're a professional dance machine, you probably didn't want anyone seeing you play. That's why Konami released a home version for the introverted crowd. Obviously, American gamers just aren't as stylish as their Japanese counterparts. That's why X-Play is here to help you expand your dance move portfolio. There's the Running Man, the Cabbage Patch, the Robot, the Shakira, the Attack of the Show promo, and of course, the Prom Night. It's the year 2006, people. Get over it. As the Japanese packaging describes it, super bass sound will make you the prisoner of dance. All I know is that if the songs are this cheesy, I do not want to be anybody's prisoner of dance. And unfortunately, that is the one failing of this game. The soundtrack ranges from mediocre to bad to this makes me throw up in my mouth a little. For example, let's examine the lyrics to the song My Sweet Banana. The game's sensors read arm swings, but you're not supposed to move your feet, which leads us to believe that it's called Paradise because it's the first dance game paraplegics can play.
Ooh, so, yeah, immediately, once again, I'm not here to cancel them for edgy jokes done back in the fucking day, but you can already tell, right out of the fucking, especially considering we make paraplegic jokes all the fucking time, but like, right out of the fucking gate, you can already tell that with Adam Susser and everything, that there's just this, like, huge unwillingness to engage with anything outside of what they feel is fun or energetic or what have you. And obviously it's hard to sit there and, you know, go back and forth because I would have to sit there and pull up tons of different reviews from other places. It's just unfortunate that X-Play was probably one of the most egregious examples of this huge mischaracterization of any sort of Japanese media, because it was a consistent problem across the board. It wasn't just them, it was places like GameSpot, EGM. You would pick up a magazine. If I pick up magazines from that era, there was that same kind of feeling of just looking at Japanese games like they were all silly anime shit. I think that the most confusing part of the interview is probably right here, where I want to say that hopefully they told this guy what they were getting the footage for, and that he was absolutely going to be clowned on, because otherwise he seems relatively genuine in his enjoyment, and he even says, oh, it's a fun party game. Nothing that he says, I would like to go ahead and reiterate, like, let's listen to what he says here again.
Have a group of
Faced geeks nationwide.
It's a good party game. It's a good game where you have a group of friends and you try it, and everyone's horrible at it first. You just laugh and move around. I mean, it's really fun that way.
Okay.
Okay, like, you have fun playing video games? Like, what are you, some kind of fucking nerd? And it was super indicative of the really bullshit off-the-wall culture that G4 tried to push forth, where it was like the complete opposite of Tech TV, where Tech TV was a celebration of all that nerd shit, while at the same time being able to poke fun at itself. And then G4 kind of turned into like a massive parody of all that entire genre of entertainment. So, but you know, for what people have this fondness for it, because it was one of the only ways to engage with the medium outside of just playing games and word of mouth, you know what I mean? And this was still sort of in the heyday where internet and not even social media was really at play. You know, you really only had BBSs and forums and you know, online games you could play with people, and these communities would be built off the ground. You would hear about, you know, I remember very clearly there was an old school clan of people I was in who played Jedi Knight 2 Outcast, and I missed those people, and they were such a blast, and it was easily one of my larger formative memories in terms of video games, right? So you had something like G4 come out and essentially corner the market on something that ended up becoming taken over by something like YouTube later on in life, right? You know, and even now what we're doing here, what we're you know, partaking in the whole conversation as a whole would not be possible, at least on the very, you know, face of it, without things like Tech TV and G4. But this was just indicative of a very large problem in which Japanese games were, in a way, kind of given, and I hate to say it like this, but it kind of puts the point home, slanted towards a different direction, in the most literal racist of ways, racist of fucking ways to interpret that, and be like, oh, well, it's all shit because it's all Japanese. It's all weird. You're just going to be a weirdo fucking person who plays Japanese games, and da-da-da-da. And there was just a massive misunderstanding. It just sucked. It's of the times, but it was something that was pretty much every single journalist was doing this. And now not only are Adam Susser and Morgan Webb being called out on this, but several people back in the day who would do this consistently are also being called out for their bullshit. I honestly think that, like, some of my favorite game journalists in the industry, probably the Games Trailers crew. Those people have been the most unproblematic crew of individuals, I think, who have only ever explicitly enjoyed the video games, even the ones that they haven't really been huge fans of. They, as opinions go, they have far more nuance and the ability to, like, actively look at everything and really take it in for what it is and appreciate it for what it is. And I don't think I've ever heard of any of those Game Trailers crew getting into a situation where they have an opinion that can be called quote unquote a shit take or what have you, you know? Remember X-Play shitting all over Final Fantasy whenever they reviewed them and fans constantly being mad at them. Yeah, and they kind of enjoyed that. There was a large portion of them that really enjoyed that whole back and forth. It was a fun dynamic that you could have it was basically content, right? You're feeding into the fucking troll. And that's essentially what fucking X-Play was about. Which sucked because the original extended play wasn't really that fucking silly. It had a couple of jokes every now and again, but then it just kind of turned into the shit show that we see here. I thought people only watched G4 for the women and not anything else. I mean, that's what I'm saying, is that there was a G4 essentially tried to corner the market on the the biggest demographic at the time was obviously the 18 to 34 demographic, and what do 18 to 34-year-old men like more than video games? Titties. So they would sit there and they would hire some of the most attractive individuals in the market just to sit there and kind of sell their brand and what have you. And they would focus on things like the booth babe culture of E3 and all sorts of other things, and they would create these shows that would essentially monopolize on the whole idea of sexual identity and what have you. You could even argue that something like Attack of the Show, which is a show that I generally enjoyed as a kid, now looking back on it and seeing Attack of the Show as it was recently, where they even had a botting incident they had to fucking take a ban for, which is really funny. I've definitely outgrown that content. I don't think it's bad per se. I think that there's definitely a market for it. If there wasn't, it wouldn't have been as successful as it was. In retrospect, you're starting to realize that I don't even think it's just that kids like it. I think it's just as time has gone on, these journalists and these people who used to be part of this culture have not been able to successfully move away from the medium as a whole, or they haven't really been able to like evolve themselves. The specter of capitalism has extended to the point where you get frozen in the loop if you don't suck that corporate cock. You're right. You're completely right. I'm not gonna blame them entirely for everything that happened on that fucking fateful show, but it is what it is, right? They had to feed into the algorithm somehow, so... Oh boy, as unnecessarily mean-spirited. What happened here? I wonder.
You're not so much Boba Fett as, like, Boba Friend?
It's kind of a character from fan fiction.
Ah, okay. Fan fiction cosplayers. Can't live with them, can't stuff them in a sack.
Yeah, kind of unnecessary, but that's sort of what their show was. Okay, so now this is happening, essentially. So instead of sitting there and maybe taking a look at the genre as a whole and saying to themselves, hey, I understand what people are talking about, or what have you, Adam has decided to effectively fucking double down really hard. Because he sat there and now is now blaming the alt-right for this. Final thought, no, the latest alt-right cause celeb progressive knee-jerk catharsis I find myself in. As I've said before, I'm not your monkey, and I'm not going to participate in these meaningless charades of public rebuke and contrition, because I don't. And of course, he uses a word like contrition because Adam Sussler is a bit too fucking far gone down the rabbit hole. I'm willing to be your racist today, just as I have been your drug addict, your censor, and your homophobe time and again. It seems to serve a purpose, and I have no image I care to maintain, and I will let run the same course as all the others. At the end of the day, my only true regret I'll admit to publicly is that I spent as much of my life as I did in the thrall of such an insipid culture and audience. I love the games and game design, but the rest is an orgy of desperation that I wasted decades on. Yeah, but you fed into it, and you did nothing to save that culture, and that's the worst part. It really does come down to, fuck, I hated Gamergate, but there was a point where Gamergate, there at the very beginning, was like, yeah, games media sucks. And we've seen it time and time again, and how it consistently fucking sucks. And then he says, dude, does anyone didn't like his consumer boner simulator in 2006, a truer gamer there never was. Which is such a fucking, like, piece of shit, like, absolute shit take from what is effectively a nuanced fucking, like, take right here. Like, I don't understand how, and this wasn't even, like, remotely combative, and immediately Adam comes right out of the fucking gate swinging. because he's a fucking dude he's a boomer. He's in his 50s and 60s, and he's mad that he's getting dragged on the fucking internet. Instead of sitting there and taking his fucking medicine, he's deciding to go ahead and be a complete and utter fuckhead about it all. And it sucks because, like, I looked up to this guy. I you know, and a part of me still does. I like the fact that he's very eloquently spoken. I still love a lot of his reviews. I still love what he's been able to do for the culture, but it seems like he's wanted nothing to do with it forever and a day, and he blames the culture on us as if he didn't actively participate in the whole affair and drive this shit down. Like he's basically not taking a responsibility for participating in this whole fucking thing. And it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating to see someone that you really admired as a kid grow up and then have them sit there and tell you that it was all for nothing. And I completely disagree with them. I completely disagree with Adam. I think that he's, you know, I don't think he's a bad guy, but I think that in the moment he's acting like a piece of shit. And it would really behoove him later on in life. But once again, so not a gamer. Like he wants something to do with gaming. It's fine. I don't give a shit. The last thing Adam Sussler was involved with was a fucking internet cesspool anyway. The G4 revival was a shit show. Everyone fucking knows it, and it fucking sucks. So it is what it is, my friend. It is essentially a very poor thing that has happened here, but it's something that will continue to go on until the end of time. I see you're talking about longtime lunatic Adam Sussler. Yeah. But yeah, I think that it's not terrible to sit there and have an opinion one way or the other about Japanese media. I think writing it off and having the more racist slant that people did for quite some time, and essentially making it seem like every game that came from Japan was a weird, creepy sex game, kind of sucked. And yeah, there's definitely moments where we have to call Japanese culture out on that kind of shit. I've talked about it at length with things like one of my favorite fucking game series of all time now, the Legend of Heroes series, aka Trails. Trails of Cold Steel 3 has a moment where it's a very fucking weird moment about like, hey, does age matter? And one of the choices is age doesn't matter, or I want younger than me. And it's just, yeah, that's weird and problematic. And there's tons of moments where they want you to engage relationships with more than fucking like, with basically children, and it sucks. And then you have things like Fire Emblem, which is still happening, and those things need to be called out, and they are being called out. And there's definitely people within the genre and the medium in Japan trying to move away from that, which is great. But it doesn't mean that every single thing that you play or that has these elements, these more sexual, like sex elements at play, are all terrible. Right, like I'm kind of curious what their fucking Bayonetta review is. I don't even know if they were around long enough to have a Bayonetta review, but I'm sure it was going to be something just as fucking explicit and just shitty take as they had back then. So, and that's sort of the problem, was that, you know, this X-Play and these things represented where game reviews were, which is why the advent of YouTube became so popular, why so many people were able to create this amazing fucking medium where now you have content creators coming out, and we can have these conversations with each other, and I have a small community of people that can talk about this kind of shit with, because of the advent of those people who are just like, yeah, I kind of want to talk about the game that I like at length, because I just see that it's getting shit on by every other reviewer. And you're creating these new communities of people, which is why I've turned around and I've said that now there is no such thing as a bad thing anymore. Every niche has a hole that can be filled, right? Like, you can turn around and do whatever you want. And it would be fine. And, you know, you're going to find, if you like this one weird game from Romania, you're probably going to find a community out there of a lot of people who are just as like-minded as you are, who are just as pumped about it. So, you know, it is what it is. And I think it's a really interesting conversation to have about where we've come from, you know, our yesteryears, and the people who used to essentially build up our industry and where our industry is now. And this is fucking with my head a little bit. But yeah, long story short, hey, stop giving so much fucking shit to the JRPGs. And filled holes, you say? I know what I said.